Hey everyone, Jason here from C Squared Racing, and I want to talk to you one more time about iRacing. And today I want to talk about iRacing's new AI feature. For about 10, 11 years since iRacing first came out, you've really only had the option of racing either with other people online, which is a fantastic option to have, or you could do test sessions by yourself on a track, just solo. For those of us that use iRacing for training, sometimes there's a need to train very specific scenarios. You want to train for a track, a very specific car, maybe a very specific time of day or weather condition. And those were things that you could really only control in a test session. You could perhaps create a race with some friends, get some buddies together, and set those conditions up. But then you'd have to work around people's schedules, get enough people around to have a meaningful amount of traffic. It sometimes is just very difficult. If you're just looking for racing competition, what's available on the pre-made races that are already out there, some of the groups that are pre-populated, those are fantastic, but you don't know what you're going to get into. You don't know if you're going to get a good group or a bad group, someone who's reckless, someone who's a good driver. They've done a good job of categorizing skill sets, but I don't do a lot of that type of racing. I'm mostly using it for training, so I'm doing test sessions mostly, and that means that my iRacing rank is not very high because I just don't do a lot of those scored events. So I end up getting stuck with folks where everybody wrecks on the first lap, and it just gets really frustrating, which makes me not want to do more of the races, which makes it also harder to get my iRacing ranking up. So, it really bugged me that there wasn't an AI option like there were with other simulators, like Sim Raceway when it first came out had that as a feature. The problem with a lot of the AI that's out there is that it's not very good. Even the Sim Raceway one, it was a pretty brainless AI. It was just racing with a bunch of drones on the track. It didn't feel like you were running against real competitors. Even some of the video games that are out there, there would be certain predictable behaviors. Everybody would bunch up into the first turn. You always knew that there was going to be a huge mass bunching of cars going into the first turn on a road course, and everybody was going to be going 2 miles an hour through the turn, and you'd end up passing 30 cars in the grass on the inside cutting the corner just because everybody stopped in front of you if you were back in the pack on the start. So it just wasn't very realistic. So when I heard that iRacing was coming out with an AI feature, I wanted to know, was this going to be something that was going to be useful for training? Am I going to be able to go into the system and put in very particular parameters? I want to race this track at night, this type of track, weather condition, track surface, all that stuff, very specific cars, and really tailor something, and then also be able to have traffic without having to worry about my friends' schedules. To me, that's very valuable as someone who wants to use it as a training tool. So that's going to be the focus of the video today, really is, does this work as a training tool, or is it just a fun thing, just a gaming thing to get people that are used to playing video games? I'm going to show you the interface, how to set it up, what some of the features are, things like that. And we'll see at the end of the video. We'll decide together whether or not it's worth your time if you're someone who's using this for training. If we can now simulate races with an AI that's better than what we've had in the past, that would be a really big thing. So let's get into it. Let's see what it looks like. Now, yes, some of you are probably noticing that I don't have a capture card, because when we decided to revamp our YouTube channel and start doing videos like this, it never occurred to us that we'd be doing video games. So we didn't invest in a capture card. I am looking into that now. If anybody has a recommendation, give it to us in the comments. We'd appreciate it. But for now, we're going old school. We're pointing the camera at the screen. And so I apologize for reflections or glare, but this will do the job. So you're going to have to use the beta UI. We do not have this feature is not available through the old user interface. iRacing has already provided a sample season, and yes, you can do a full season with AI racing. You don't have to just do single events. You can actually set up a season, come up with your own point systems. You can create your own AI racers. You can program in your friends or program in your favorite drivers, from the pro ranks, whatever you want. So you have a create season option, where you can start creating the season. You essentially, first you name it. I don't know if I can go through here without actually inputting anything. I can. Okay, so I'll just show you the different menus. I won't actually create something, but it's a limited list of tracks that are available for AI. It's a lot more than what was available. If we scroll the screen down, you've got quite a bit available. We're going to be running Watkins Glen today. I'm a Western New York guy. That's my home track, so we're going to use that one. But there's a decent amount of tracks, both in the U.S. and overseas, that you have available to you now. A lot more than when it first came out 5-6 months ago. You set your weather conditions, and you can do this per track, I believe. You don't have to have the same weather for each track. You set up your race sessions just like in a normal race that you create. You decide, do I want practice and qualifying? You don't have to. You can just jump right into racing. And then you decide how long you want each one of those sessions to be. Race options. Qualifying conduct scrutiny. I haven't played with this. They do have these little helpful buttons. You just hover over the question marks, and they kind of tell you what it is. In this case, this is about, if you've done qualifying, you know that a lot of times it doesn't count your laps if you go off the track, even just a little bit. I know from, excuse me again, I know from actually being a course marshal, the iRacing is actually way stricter on that stuff than the actual race series are, which I think is kind of funny. But you can turn that off here if you want. You can turn off car damage if you want. The selection of cars, again, is not huge. The Audi R3 is what we'll be running today. I also have the MX-5 Cup car. I don't like this car at all. I like the old MX-5 Cup car, but I don't like the new one. They have the Dallara car, that's more the IndyCar style, the F3 car. The Skip Barber Formula 2000 is the other open wheel car they have available. The 3 NASCAR, the Chevy, the Ford, and the Toyota are available, as well as some other, a couple of Porsches. The next thing that you do, it's not going to let me go any further. Okay, so without actually filling all this out, it's not going to let us go to the next phases, but I'll tell you what they are. So choosing your opponents. Once you pick a track, it'll let you pick your opponents. There's track options. Obviously, you have to pick a track because those options will be specific for that track. Track conditions, time of day, and then your event settings. So not that different from setting up an actual race. It's pretty much the same process. And then you can set your own point system. This, I think, is kind of cool. You can determine, what each system pays out. You can pick from, I think the Grand Prix is I'm guessing this is the Formula One system. The oval looks like that's the NASCAR system. So you can pick your own settings if you want to customize how the points work in your season. One other thing to note, we'll close out of here. No, we're not going to save. Is that this also, like test sessions, doesn't count towards your ratings, your safety rating or your skill rating. None of that is affected. Those are only changed if you're racing against actual competition. So that's kind of nice. Again, from a training standpoint, I want to be able to go and practice things without having to worry about messing up my rating when I want to get into a road race. So that's the test sessions and things like this are where I go to get comfortable with something that I don't know real well, a new car, a new course, or giving myself some really tough track conditions to deal with, things where it's going to be more likely that I'm going to struggle, and you really don't want to have to bring down your ranking in order to learn those things. You want to be able to feel free to do that. The next option that's in the AA menu is the create an opponent roster. Again, you can pick a roster name, and then you've got all cars in single class or used car classes, and then you add a car. Say if we pick the Audi R3, then it lets you start adding in fictitious drivers. And it'll just create them if you want, and you can also make your own if you want. So I can just add a bunch of Audi drivers, and it gives everybody a cool paint scheme and comes up with names that sound like real people. And you just keep clicking it, and it'll just keep doing that. And then you can come in here, and I can edit these names to make them whoever I want to. I can give them silly names, and I can mess with their statistics and things like that. I don't know if I can. I guess I can change. I don't know what that does, changing their rankings, but I don't know if that changes their starting positions. Shouldn't. Doesn't seem like it would, but that's how you create the roster. So again, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna use the default roster. So we're going to discard changes. And what we're going to get into here is single race. I think this is probably what most people are going to use. I don't think a lot of people are going to set up entire seasons. So for this, you pick your track. We've already got Watkins Glen picked, and here you can pick which layout you want to use. Of course, we're going to use the boot because that's the only correct layout to use a Watkins Glen. Go to weather. I'm not going to change any of this. I'm going to leave it as the default, but you have all the options that you would normally have available. You can generate the weather randomly and things like that if you want to deal with stuff. Race sessions, again, just like the other menu. For this race, we'll do a 5-minute practice, a 10-minute qualifier, and then we'll do a short 15-minute race. And you can go by time or by laps. The next option is your race options. And just like the other one, again, qualifying scrutiny, you can turn that off, lenient, moderate, strict, however you want it, disabling car damage. Same menu as the season menu. Set my car, we've already got that set as the RS3 LMS. Opponents. Here's where you can select how difficult you want your opponents to be. You can pick how many you want. Obviously, the more cars you have on the track, the more it's going to affect your frame rate and things like that. I kind of like having a lot of cars on the track. I don't know what this is going to do to my frame rate because this is not a real high-powered computer, but when I raced at Indy, we had a whole lot more than 60 cars on the track, and that made it very difficult. You were always in traffic, and that's why I wanted to practice in traffic, is because I knew it was going to be that way. Here you can change the settings. I like the labels here. Aliens and cheaters. You can go over 100% if you want. It's interesting that anything over 90% is an alien. I have some pro driving friends that might take offense to that. But you can change. What's cool here is it's not just changing your AI strength, but it's giving you a window. So being at a grassroots level, and most of the people that we work with being at a grassroots level, there can be a wide variety of skill sets. You can have some people that are very good, and you can have some people that are just starting out. At the pro rankings, you're going to have this band be very narrow. Everybody's going to be pretty close to each other skill-wise. But at the lower levels, when people are just learning, you're going to have some people that have been doing it for a long time and some people that are just starting. And this may be a wide variation, and you can really play with that. One other option that I think is actually really cool is this avoid me option. And what this does is it just makes the AI cars try really hard not to hit you. And if you're practicing a NASCAR Cup race and you want that NASCAR Cup type competition feel, you probably don't want to turn that on because they're going to be beating and banging and trading paint. If you're practicing for something that's more grassroots, it's more likely that this is actually going to represent how drivers are going to drive. People aren't going to want to bend up their cars. People are going to try really hard to avoid wrecks because they've got limited equipment in the pits. They've got limited money to buy replacement parts. They don't have a backup car sitting in a $1 million hauler. So, people are trying to get to the end of a race, and so there isn't a tremendous amount of contact usually. People are generally very courteous. So for the type of racing that I do at my level, having people sort of be adverse to contact is actually more realistic. And so I like to turn that on. I think that's interesting that they have that as an option. And then we'll go to the next setting here, track options. Here's where you can change how you're going to start, rolling starts or standing starts. We'll do rolling. Here's adjusting how you do restarts. How you do cautions is down here. Joker laps is more relevant for different types of events, dirt events, things like that. Fast repairs. You can put a limit on how many times people can do fast repairs. So we'll leave that off for now. And then the last section is just your summary, and this is where it again just sums up everything that you've selected and gives you one last chance to review things. You can turn this off if you don't want it on. I like this. I like that it gives me an opportunity to make sure that I selected everything correctly. And you just select race, and that loads up the simulator. So one thing I'll mention since I last cut the video, I found out that I can't talk and drive at the same time. I tried to do some commentary through practice and qualifying, and I just kept wrecking. Another thing I had to do was lower the field. My computer's not super high-end, as I mentioned, and it just couldn't handle the number of cars. It was having all kinds of visual glitches and things like that. So we decided to lower it down to a 20-car field instead of I think we had it as a 40-car field. So it's running much, much better now the way it was when I was practicing earlier. So hopefully this will work a lot better. We qualified, I think, pretty far back. I didn't actually see. I think we're towards the back because I got held up by another car. One thing I can tell you immediately is that they fight you as hard in qualifying as they do in the race. There doesn't seem to be a difference in the way that the AI attacks you or defends against you in a practice or qualifying session as compared to a race. You know, normally against a real person in qualifying, if you were faster, something, they would just move out of the way. Here, you really gotta pass them just like you would in a race. You really gotta set them up and get around them. So that part's a little annoying when you have a limited time in a qualifying session and you're faster than somebody. It really wastes a lot of time to have to just back off, and of course you can back into somebody too. There's always somebody behind you, and you're just causing the same problem for them. So it would be really nice if the settings were such in a qualifying mode that they just sort of moved out of the way if you're running a faster lap time. Now, one thing that you'll remember from other simulator games is, and this is something that always bugged me, but it was something you could use to your advantage sometimes, is that first turn on a road course, everybody would bunch up to such an extreme extent that they would be going 30 miles an hour through that first turn. And it would just be ridiculous. And if you timed it right, you could pass a ton of cars because they were all going so slow. Earlier when I tried this, I was starting a lot closer to the front, so we'll see how it is in the back. But when I was starting fifth, I noticed that bunch up didn't seem to be quite as bad. But of course I only had 4 cars in front of me. I didn't have 20 like I do now. So we'll see what it's like going into that first turn. That's something that to me always sort of ruined simulated AI races for me, was just that fact that everybody would basically come to a stop when there was a car in front of them. Obviously, when you have a crowd like this in a real race, there is going to be a concertina effect, a bunching effect that happens in a corner, especially at the start of a race. That's when you're most likely to have an accident. Especially anyone who's been doing iRacing races knows that after at the beginning of a race or after a restart, there's always a real high likelihood that there's going to be an accident. But we'll see. That'll be something I'm interested in seeing. And I will say that once the race got started, I tried this earlier, it seemed like it was pretty realistic. I was pretty happy with it. So coming to the green here, I gotta catch up. Everyone's speeding up a little bit. Green flag is out. All right, so let's see what everyone does. I'm gonna be a little careful here just in case it happens. I might lay back just a little bit. Honestly, not that bad. A lot better than what I've seen in other games. That's really not too bad, considering I was at the back end of the field. So I'm impressed by that. That felt more like a real restart. Yeah, I don't notice over braking. I'm in a gaggle of cars here, but cars are keeping their momentum going through the turns. I don't see a lot of over braking and excessive slowing. So even though I'm in a pack of cars, they're still keeping their speed up. I'm being very careful with this group here because, like I said, I want to stay with the traffic. I don't want to do anything that's going to cause an accident. So I'm probably going about 80% here. I could really challenge these cars if I wanted to, but I want to keep them in front of me so we can kind of see what they do. But I will try and get side by side here at some point. I don't need to be this far back. I can catch up a little bit. I also noticed too that down here into turn 1, a lot of times simulated cars in other games would not use the runoff. You will see, you saw one car use it a little bit kind of there, but cars will use that runoff. It is fair game in iRacing, and I've noticed that some cars do go down in there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Sometimes in games like this, the AI opponents will not use those available areas. I don't think those are the current accurate rumble strips for Watkins Glen. A very wide turn there. Try to carry a little too much speed through there. They've made those worse in recent years. I don't know exactly what year it was that they made the change, but the rumble strips in the bus stop now are a lot more severe than what they used to be. And I haven't driven the track since they put the new ones in. But I feel like the ones in iRacing, they feel like the ones that were in before. So I don't think they've updated the track to put the really, really rough ones in. They are, the old ones were pretty rough. I was really surprised that they decided to make them worse. I didn't think they needed to be any worse. Wow, 3 wide. Did we do it? Nope. Got one of them. Bumped off the curb there a little bit, but I got him. And that's where that setting about not wanting to make contact comes in. If you do something stupid and you come out of your line, rather than hold the line and take the contact, the AI driver will give you space. You know, there's a certain sense of self-preservation that drivers have in the real world. This does, you know, that setting does a decent job of trying to capture. Whoa! So we had a little bit of an incident here. That may have been my fault. So there's that 3 wide pass I made, or tried to make. Got one of them. I think you got a chance to see that, you know, it's pretty good. It's not bad AI. They do a pretty good job of trying to avoid you. They generally make clean passes. Again, we had that checkbox ticked to, you know, to have the cars kind of avoid contact if it's possible. So I think that makes that aspect of it more realistic. If you want a more full contact race, you'll turn that off. But you know, in most forms of racing, contact is avoided as much as possible. So. So I like that setting. I like that option, and I feel like it makes it more realistic. Having, you know, driving in real cars. A lot of the people that did videos on this only run esports. They don't have a lot of actual time in cars. I will say, running into heavy traffic at a grassroots level, where guys are concerned about keeping the cars clean, that's how you drive with each other. You're aggressive, but you give room. You're not taking out people's mirrors and running into the back of them. You're staying close, but giving yourself margin for error. And that's the way the AI drives in this game. It's competitive. I like the fact that you can change those sliders to have a wide range of skill sets in a particular race, or a narrow. You can drive against an amateur field or against a pro field. We sort of had a middle setting picked, where you know, it wasn't amateur drivers, but it wasn't pro drivers either. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of accidents other than the ones that I created. You know, I've just run a couple of short races with the AI, but I don't notice a ton of computer simulated accidents. Maybe in different forms of racing, you'll see that more often. On a fairly long road course with only 20 cars, maybe it's not expected that there'd be a lot of incidents, but it does seem like the AI does a good job of staying on the track. Now, maybe that's that checkbox. Maybe it's not just you they avoid. Maybe the game has them trying to avoid contact with each other as well, and that helps prohibit the accidents. But as I said, you know, the big thing for me is how do they drive in packs? Do they keep their pace up, or do they just become ungodly slow and slamming on the brakes and things like that? And they don't. They even when you're in the back of a large pack, it still maintains a fairly competitive pace, which is good, because you know, you You want to focus on running good laps and not have to keep looking at the car in front of you all the time, and wondering when it's just, you just got to slam on the brakes to avoid driving into the back of them. So I'm pretty happy with this, actually. You know, having gone against actual competition, this feels a lot like that. It doesn't feel that different. You know, there's a certain amount of unpredictability that you get with actual racers. That the AI is not going to predict. It's not going to predict the guy that you know makes the same mistakes that you as a human being make, that blows that turn wide for no reason, or that misjudges the distance between him and the next car, and you know gets into him and makes that kind of mistake. So you still, you know, as someone who wants to develop, you want to get used to driving against real people and to introduce that element of human error, you know, into the equation, into your training regimen. So you still want to do the races with actual people. But, you know, when you say, hey, there's something in particular that I want to work on, something that I want to practice on, where I need to set the track up or the car up a very specific way, you can do that. This gives you that great opportunity to have that controlled experience that up until, you know, for the last 10, 11 years, you haven't had in iRacing. So I really like that. I really think that's cool. I think I'm going to use this feature a lot personally. I still like getting in, doing real races, and getting that human element, but I also like getting into something where I know I can control it somewhat, and I can work on very specific things. I think if you're looking to practice, and you don't want to deal with other people sometimes, I think this is really great. So if you have iRacing, definitely check this out. I would expect that over time they're going to add more of their fleet of cars, and more of the tracks. And by the way, can I just point out this flagman here? No flagman actually waves a flag like that. That is a pet peeve of mine in iRacing. If anyone from iRacing is watching this video, please fix that. That looks goofy. That looks silly as hell. Even celebrity race starters don't wave the flag like that. That is absolutely ridiculous. Thanks for joining us. Take care, and we'll see you on the next lap. Bye, everybody. He's waving a flag like he's beating someone to death with the flag stick. You could never effectively wave a flag like that. Please fix that, iRacing. Anyway.